Serger versus sewing machine. Let the battle begin. Hi, I'm Cathy, and this is Sewing Tech Talk. There really is no battle. That was kind of an overly dramatic beginning. A serger and a sewing machine, well, they're kind of basically different machines. You both use them when you sew. A sewing machine is going to be your first investment. So when you start to sew, you've got to have a sewing machine because there's some things a serger just can't do. So sewing machine, a good sewing machine is your first investment. After that, depending on what you create, a serger is probably going to be your next machine. A serger is great for garment construction, home decor. I use it in quilting all the time. I mean, there's so much that a serger can do, and it does some things better than a sewing machine can do. Now, a serger is never going to make a buttonhole, but a sewing machine can't do some of the really elegant finishes that a serger can. So let's talk about some of the things that a serger can do, some of the applications you would have for it. So when you're making a garment, putting in a collar on a knit, serger is excellent at that. I made this entire little dress all on the serger. All I did at the very end was use a hand needle to put the button on. Everything on this dress was made on a serger, and it's beautiful and it's elegant. Of course, any kind of a knit garment, all done on the serger. If you have a hard to handle fabric, this fabric, I made this jacket, and this fabric just wrinkled when you look at it cross-eyed. So when I did the seams, I did the serged edge on either side. I sewed them on the sewing machine, but they're not going to ravel because I elegantly finished them on the serger, and the inside looks just as good as it does on the outside. A serger has what's called a differential feed, and you can gather just amazing gathered seams with just one pass. So this little ruche strip that I put in my little table runner, easy peasy on the serger. The serger will just gather it on up. You can quilt piece on a serger. This quilt was pieced on a serger. Even these crazy little points. Now, I wouldn't do it on every quilt, but if you're wanting to piece something, a serger might be your best friend, because on a serger, the thread feeds continuously. So a serger will do a beautiful, elegant edge. On this little project, I did this edge on this little rosette beautifully with decorative fabric. This is actually a machine embroidery thread I used on this, and it looks absolutely professional. So you can get professional edge results using the overlock function. Speaking of that, I did that same little rolled hem on the edge of this binding on the quilt, and when I folded it over, it looked like I had the best little piping that you'd ever want to see. So a serger is a machine that feeds thread through and forms a stitch differently than a sewing machine does. Now, on a sewing machine, I'm sure you're aware that a sewing machine, you have the thread on the top and you wind yourself a little cassette. We call it a bobbin. And so that goes down in the bobbin area. When you run out of thread on the bobbin, because it can only hold so much, then you have to wind a new one and put a new one on in. A serger works differently. A serger, down in the inner workings, a serger has what we call loopers. And what a looper does is thread is coming through continuously, and it's going to feed through these loopers, and they're going to literally throw a loop of thread on the top and a loop of thread on the bottom, and it's going to be caught by either one or two needles, depending on the stitch that you're going to do. So let me make it go. Let me grab my foot pedal here, and let's make it go. And you can see, they can go slow. You can see that it actually can go quite quickly. You're going to not run out of thread because you're going to use a whole giant thread cone on there. And when you run out of this, you've done a heck of a lot of serging. So it feeds thread through differently. It also has a different set of feed dogs. On a sewing machine, you have a set of feed dogs that are about yay big. and they work really good. But a serger has, let me take off the foot, a serger has a set in the front and a set in the back. And they work independently, so that's how it can gather or even stretch out fabric. So if you've sewn an edge on your sewing machine and you've done an overlock stitch, because the sewing machine has a stitch that kind of mimics a serger stitch. And if you're going along the edge or something, the sewing machine is going to go stitch, 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 and then move on to the next part, and that's how it's overcast over the edge. Well, the serger works differently. It literally throws those loops over the edge that it's already cut with the knife, and one stitch forms that stitch. So basically, it doesn't have to move so much when it does that overcast, and that's how it can make a much more elegant finish. And with the feed dogs, you can literally control that edge. So you're not going to get the lasagna edge, or you're not going to get it pulling in. You can control how the serger works that. This serger is a self-threading serger. What does that mean? That means that there's a system in this serger so that when you're trying to get the thread through these loopers, and if you've had a serger that's not self-threading, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of people have had trouble or issues getting the thread through all these little nooks and crannies, through the path it needs to get to where it can sew. But on a Baby Lock serger that are self-threading, then you literally put it in the hole, with a puff of air, it threads the loopers. We're going to do that in just a minute. But a serger like this is one that you're going to use because it's super easy to get it threaded. So a Baby Lock serger threads really easy, and it can do all kinds of functions. It has great features that we're going to talk about. Let me move this sewing machine out of the way. What we're going to do is we're going to fire this Baby Lock up and get to serging, and you'll see all the fun stuff that it can do. So let me move this machine out of the way, and I'll be right back. So now we're going to thread up the Baby Lock Celebrate. And we're going to use the big serger cones that I showed you before, but you don't have to use those. If you have the smaller thread spools, you can use those as well on a serger. In fact, the machine comes with little spool caps that are specially designed to help you use those smaller spools of thread. So if you want to use a regular spool, no matter what configuration that it is, you can use a decorative thread. I've even used some embroidery threads, and you can use multiple threads at once, but that's another tech talk. So they give you the spool caps that you need to make that thread flow smoothly. But we're going to thread up with some bigger cones right now. So we need to get this machine ready for the jet air threading. So what I'm going to do is open up the front cover, I push this button, and I turn the flywheel on the side till it clicks in place. And if I'm quiet for a second, you'll hear. There. Everything clicked into place, and you can see these are called tubular loopers. The thread's going to travel through those loopers to get to where it needs to be. So everything is engaged. I'm going to take my thread. Now I can thread in any order, which is not true with a lot of other sergers. In most sergers, you have a little map here that tells you thread this one first, thread this one second. This one, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to take my thread straight on up into the telescoping thread guide, come straight down, click it in place, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to put the cut end into the little hole. This is the upper looper, so I'm going to use the left-hand hole, and I'm going to tell the machine I'm in that hole. I literally push that and it's threaded. It's so fast you can hardly tell. So here's my second thread. Here's my lower looper. I'm going to tell it I'm threading that port there. Take the thread, stick it in the little hole, push down, and thread it. Voila. Now that is so fast and easy, it's almost scary. I remember my very first jet air threading, and I had chills when I saw it because I had threaded another serger before. Sometimes it required an adult beverage after you got done, so just saying. So now, if they thread the loopers, they also thread your needles. And at my age, I think that's an advantage. So what I'm going to do is release the looper threading mechanism. And on the side of the machine, there's a little green line that you just match the two up. And now I'm ready to thread my needles. So I have 2 needles in there because I'm going to do a 4 thread. This is the thread for the right-hand needle. I bring it down. It kind of looks like I'm threading a sewing machine, even though I'm not. I'm coming here, up and over, and this is my little threader guy right here. It goes to the left needle or to the right needle. I'm going to take my thread, bring that down, catch it on there, and it pulls my little thread through. Just as fast and easy as that. Don't you wish you had that on everything? So here's my other thread. Notice it's a slightly different color than the others. On a serger, you're casting over the edge. Sometimes if you're worried about seeing that thread on the seam, if the seam accidentally gets opened up a little bit much, the only thread that really has to match is the one that's closest to that edge of not the edge of the seam, the inside part of the seam. So when I'm sewing my little quilt here, this is the thread that I had that matched the best. So I'm using this beige on the left-hand needle to, just in case my seam opens up. Generally it doesn't, but you never know. So now I'm going to thread the other needle. I'm going to say thread the other needle, bring this down, grab my thread, and it literally pulls it through just as quick as that. Now I'm threaded and I'm ready to sew. I have it set up for the 4th thread. Now, there's a manual that comes with the machine for the different type of stitches that it will do. I'm set up for a 4th thread, which means that it's the most thread that I have in there. It's a very stable seam. It's a seam I would use in like doing a garment, a woven garment. Now, if I'm doing a swimsuit or something that I want a little bit more stretch, I would go down to a 3 thread because a 3 thread's a little bit stretchier. All I have to do for that is take out one of the needles, one or the other, depending on how wide I want my seam. Now this Baby Lock Serger has tension dials, one for each of the threads. Don't be scared. It's not difficult to change the tension settings for the different stitches that you're going to do. The machine comes with a handy dandy chart. So if you're going to, say, do a 3-thread rolled edge, it shows you all the different settings for the tension, and you can adjust the length of the stitch and the width that it's going to cut, because you have that blade there that's cutting the fabric. So you have a tension setting in your book, and you can do some cool stitches. This one is on the edge of some polar fleece. It looks like a kind of a blanket stitch. It's a really fun edge. Say you're going to do some active wear and you don't want anything that's kind of abrasive against the skin. So this is a flat lock seam. It's done on the edge and then the fabric's pulled apart, and you can see on the one side it has that ladder. On the other side it has the upper looper that you can see. You could even use super soft thread in there so it doesn't chafe. This is a great stitch for doing activewear. And if you want to adjust the machine for that, there's the tension settings are in the book. Super simple and super easy. But like I said, we're ready to sew. So I'm going to close my little doors, get my little test piece of fabric, and let's see if we can do a good seam. I'm going to lower the presser foot just like you do on any other machine. I've got those threads in there. Oops, I forgot. This machine gathers really, really easy. And I was gathering the last time I serged. That's why you start on a little piece of fabric, to make sure you have all your settings right. So over here I can completely gather. I can stretch the fabric apart like doing a lettuce edge. In is normal, neutral, no gathering. I totally forgot and left it there. So let me stitch on. Much better. Good thing I did a sample. There's a cutter on the side, and you can see where it was gathering up here, but oh my gosh, perfect every time. So if you've ever threaded a serger and after about an hour you were like, oh, I don't even want to sew anymore, it's not going to happen on this Baby Lock Serger. So the project I've given you instructions for is a simple serger quilt. And how does that quilt work? Well, it's really kind of fun. What you do, it's kind of the flip and sew method. So what you do is you start out with a little strippy quilt sandwich, and then you add on pieces by having the batting, a piece of fabric, another piece of fabric on the side. I'm going to sew here and then flip both of these out. It kind of quilts it as you sew. It's a really fun project. Actually, this went so fast I had to remind myself to stop and have the last one so I could show it to you. So I have all my raw edges. Remember, the instructions are, go to the directions, download the instructions. You don't have to worry about taking notes right now. I've lined up my edges and I have my wonder clips on here. Now, let me give you a warning about a serger. A serger has a blade that's going to cut the edge of the fabric. You can turn it off, but for the most part, you'll be trimming that edge so that you get that perfect overlock. You don't want to serge over a pin. Let me say that one more time. You don't want to serge over a pin. You could nick your blade, but most importantly, I care about you. I don't want that pin to fly up and hit you in the eye. So you shouldn't have to wear safety glasses when you serge. So I use wonder clips. You're not going to miss that. You're going to take the wonder clip out as you come to it. So when you get your serger, just order your wonder clips at the same time, and you'll use these for absolutely everything. In fact, keep them safe, because you'll find that your husband will have used them to close the bag of the tortilla chips. Just saying. So keep them safe. So here's my wonder clips. Here's my edges. Everything isn't even on the side because the fabric width of fabric strips were different. That doesn't matter. I'm going to cut that off when I finish the edge anyway. Now, the cool thing about this serger that has the blade that's over here, if you've played on any other kind of serger, sometimes the blades swing out and up if you want to keep the blade from engaging while you sew. This serger's different. It has a blade that's flat onto the side of the machine. So you really can't get stuff caught in it when you're serging. And so if I want to put the blade down, I just turn this dial right here and the blade goes down. The advantage of that is I am going to serge over some pretty thick stuff. The blade has a big clearance for thick stuff. So say you're making garments for cosplay, or you're doing some sort of a big home decor project that involves something fluffy or super heavy fabrics. This serger can handle it because that blade is not going to allow fabric to get caught in there. So enough talking, let's get to serging. So I'm going to serge along this edge. I'm going to ramp up on there. Let me find my foot control and get that edge underneath there, and away we go. I'm going to take out my wonder clip as I come to it, and I'm cutting off some of the edge. So I'll finish that a little bit later. I didn't want you to have to wait around while I did the whole thing. So now this Baby Lock serger is the Baby Lock Celebrate. It's a self-threading serger. It has tension dials. Baby Lock has other sergers that do some different things. The one without tension dials, pretty fantastic. Not that they're hard to use, it's just that it's a slightly different system and you don't have to worry about getting out your book and looking at it. It's really super fast and easy. Now a serger can also do another type of stitch. A serger can also do what's called a cover, which is also a chain stitch. This serger is a 4-thread serger. It does all of the overlock functions. 4-thread, 3-thread, rolled hem, flat lock, all of those stitches it does. Baby Lock has other sergers that also do the cover stitch, and they're kind of unique in the industry. They are an 8-thread serger, because when you're doing the cover or chain stitch, you can use up to 4 threads as well. So 4 threads for the overlock, 4 threads for the chain and cover stitch. You can do them in a combination. What is a cover stitch? Well, if you ever looked on the bottom of a knit garment, when I made this, I did a cover stitch to hem it up. This is kind of what a cover stitch looks like. On the back, it covers that raw edge. That's why it's called a cover stitch. It also, if you take down to one needle, it's a chain stitch, and you can use that for construction or for something decorative. It can do both of those at the same time. So Baby Lock has sergers that can do both of those stitches at the same time. This is that really pretty overlock stitch that this machine can do, but this is the back of that cover stitch, and I've used it in a decorative way. It's using all of those threads at once. So that's an option for you if you want to have that cover stitch. There's also a separate cover stitch machine that Baby Lock makes. Shouldn't be that complicated. If you just want the overlock functions, great. If you want also the capacity to do a cover stitch, there's a standalone or there's a combination machine. So there's a serger that's right for you. And Baby Lock Sergers, self-thread, which is pretty exciting. So I hope you enjoyed getting to know the Baby Lock Celebrate a little bit. I think George might have something to say because George always has something to say. George, what do you say about sergers? What's the deal?
Thanks, Kathy. That was a great presentation as always. Don't forget, you can download that project that she has for you by clicking on the link below. You know, a serger can truly cut your sewing time by half and give you a much more efficient and better quality stitch. The problem is many sergers are difficult to use. The Baby Lock Celebrate has their original air threading feature where it threads both upper and lower loopers with a burst of air. Plus, it even threads both needles. This serger instantly can change to a rolled edge just by a turn of the dial, and you get a beautiful finished rolled edge. It also works with a wide variety of decorative threads for doing a 2-thread overlock with a thick thread, or even this special serger crochet technique that Baby Lock can do beautifully. And this is shown with, again, thicker threads. Because it's easy to use, you'll do more things like this. It also has a differential feed. Not only can you use this for gathering, but it gives you control on heavy fabric, on stretchy fabric with elastic, on sheer fabric perfectly. Now, the Baby Lock Celebrate is available at a very special buy right now. Originally, it has a retail price of $24.99, but right now it's on sale for $9.99. But wait, we're including a special bonus. A bonus that includes all this wonderful decorative thread by Sulky and Madeira, as well as a 6-month online training membership by Baby Lock. This has a value of over $500 combined, and it's included free. Plus, we are not charging for shipping, and we have 0% financing available. But this is only while supplies last, so don't wait. Click on the link here. Call us at 1-800-865-9664. At Moore's, we carry the full line of Baby Lock sergers, from the most basic Baby Lock Vibrant, which offers an incredible quality serger on sale right now for $399. Of course, the Celebrate, as well as the popular Victory, Acclaim, and even the top model Baby Lock Triumph 8-thread serger that threads not only the loopers but all the needles with a burst of air, and can do up to 8 threads in combination, as well as the cover hem. And this is an amazing product. Speaking of cover hem machine, the cover stitch on the Euphoria is so amazing, where you can sew stretchy knit and active wear, and it gives you a flexible seam, but this also has automatic thread delivery, so there's no tension adjustments. But let us help you decide on the right serger. Give us a call at 1-800-865-9664, and I'll have an experienced staff member go through the different features of the sergers, discuss what your interests are, and guide you through that serger purchase. Again, that's 1-800-865-9664. Bye for now.